Hey everyone, welcome back to the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. Thanks for joining us. A couple weeks ago, I and Ryan both sat through a metric ton of films for Sundance Film Festival. Over the last week or so, it has been the Slamdance Film Festival, and we are lucky enough to have with us the director of one of the documentary films. This is Chelsea Christer, who directed the documentary Bleeding Audio, which can be about a lot of things. How do you sum up? Because I like to read the synopsis for the films before I decide if I'm going to watch them, and then oftentimes debate how accurate said synopsis was. So, would you describe Bleeding Audio for the listener?
Absolutely. So thank you for having me. Bleeding Audio is a music documentary that follows the highs and lows of the Match's career, but also takes a deeper look at the changing digital music industry and how artists can redefine success for themselves in this different landscape.
Pretty accurate to what we've got, in my opinion. You are the filmmaker, so I won't really argue too much. First off, how are you enjoying this weird virtual film festival thing that we have going on now?
You know, I'm just appreciative that film festivals are sticking to it and giving filmmakers a platform no matter what. You know, our whole goal as being independent filmmakers is to have a platform and an audience. And the fact that film festivals are continuing to give us that despite the current state of the world, it means the world to me as an artist. But also, you know, of course, I miss the in-theater experience. I've been working on this film for 6 years of my life, and I've been just craving that theatrical feeling of hearing and feeling that energy of people experiencing my film. So, you know, obviously I miss that, but I love that we're able to kind of reach a bigger audience across the entire world, you know, and that's been a really interesting and compelling kind of trade-off for the in-theater experience to like actually, you know, speaking with people who might otherwise not be able to attend one of these festivals. So it's been different. And, you know, I think that there's positives and negatives on either side, but right now it's just been overwhelmingly positive. So
that's good to hear, because that's supposed to be positive and fun. You said you've been working on the documentary for 6 years. The Matches, for people that don't know, punk-ish band. They're not real punk. They're kind of punk. They're mostly punk. They're sort of punk. From the Oakland area, right?
Yep.
2003-ish to 2009-ish.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that they, it's so funny because, you know, they started in the garage in 97, but they started taking it seriously in the year 2000. And so they were about 2000 to 2009, I would say, as operating as a full-time band.
As a full-time band. And they hit, as you said, just as the digital revolution was starting. And anyone that's as old as me remembers when Napster was a thing and remembers when all of the illegal downloading happened. And it did hurt a lot of artists, but the up and coming artists, the just starting out artists, found themselves walking into a dynamic in which old measurement tools no longer applied. So you've been working on this for 6 years. When did you decide the Matches? Did you decide to do the Matches, or did you decide to do the music industry? And how did those two meet for purposes of this film?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I was kind of setting out to tell a story for the Matches, but just in the form of like just promotional videos when they decided to reunite, and just do a couple of shows. And so I said, oh, you know, I'll help you guys out and help promote it. But as I was like learning about their story, their entire career just felt so interesting to me. And so, and just such a great example of how so many bands sort of, you know, fell by the wayside because of the changing industry. And honestly, the changing record industry has always been something that I've found really interesting. And so when we set out to make this film, you know, I had a lot of people pushing back, and they're like, oh, you can't make a story about this band nobody's heard of because no one's going to find it interesting. I mean, I disagree. I think that they're great characters, and I always kind of held on to that. but I always knew that I wanted to use their story to try and tell the bigger one. And so it's always kind of gone hand in hand. I always knew that to me as a fan and friend of the band, learning kind of the dissonance between how their career was handled in a changing landscape and how like kind of ignorant a lot of people were of how, of like what the impact of that changing landscape was going to be was, you know, was fundamentally connected in their career among so many other things. And so I knew I wanted to, I don't know if expose is the right word, but I really wanted to shine a light on this side of the industry and the fallout from it that I feel like most consumers didn't really connect in their heads. Because I feel like as consumers and fans of artists and bands, you know, we think that, oh, just like taking, you know, downloading free music is just screwing over the record labels, but it's not necessarily doing that. There's like so many unintended consequences to it as well. And touring was one of those, like relentless touring is one of those unintended consequences. So
absolutely. I was gonna ask why the matches, were they one of your bands? Well, clearly they were. They were one of yours, which I have mine. There's a couple on the wall. But that's I'm a Rush fan, so it's,
I love it.
but no, so I think you made an excellent choice in going with a smaller band that not a lot of people have heard of, because I hadn't heard of them, but they're actually probably close to my daughter's wheelhouse as a whole. But most of the stuff she listened to that I could appreciate musically, which is nice. They just weren't something I would turn on every day, but they clearly, as you watch Bleeding Audio, it's clear that they have talent. This isn't a typical garage bar band type of thing. So if you're going to make a point about the record industry, I think you have to do it with a quality exemplar. And I think the matches gave you like the perfect vehicle of that exemplar of this is a band, you know, 5 years earlier would have been a completely different career trajectory.
I 100% agree. And I super appreciate you seeing that, because I feel like some of the criticism, I wouldn't say, but some of the like comments that we've had on the film is like, oh, where's the sex, drugs, rock and roll? Like, where's the drama? And the kind of point of the film is, you know, because my response to that is like, you know, yeah, there isn't any drama. It was hard to like construct drama a little bit, but that's kind of the point, is like, to me, the matches are the perfect case study for this changing industry and this landscape, because, you know, there wasn't excess. There weren't these like dramatic, you know, tried and true rock star, you know, pitfalls that so many bands go through. You know, they worked so hard, you know, they're so hardworking, they're so focused, like they treated this like a career. And so what better case study than to show a band that wasn't, you know, set aside or, you know, thrown away by the glamour of rock and roll, and it was just the hard work and the changing industry that, you know, was essentially the answer to their demise, you know.
Yeah, they didn't do themselves in. Exactly. Like a lot of bands did. They didn't self-destruct the system. The system as a whole wasn't built anymore for what they had done. So did you watch any other music documentaries to kind of prepare to see how you know, what you wanted to say and how that might have been said before to determine what worked and didn't work?
Yeah, so when I was leading into it, I think when I went into production, I watched several music documentaries, and mostly though I was like reading books when I went into production. I just wanted to make sure that I was structuring my interviews and in a way that, you know, could get the best results. And you know, my day job is I do a lot of like corporate talking head sort of interviews. So like I had a lot of practice and just like, you know, pulling an interview out of somebody who doesn't really want to be sitting there talking about something. But when it came to post-production, I started post-production by watching a lot of music docs. And then at a certain point, they became almost too distracting and influential. And so I just stopped and I was like, I want this to kind of be my own thing instead of just constantly having ideas. Right. So I just sort of distilled what I had watched. And a lot of the films that I viewed was like Searching for Sugar Man was a big influence. To me, that's kind of how I initially started pitching the film. Is I was like, this is like a much smaller scale Searching for Sugar Man story, you know, where it's about this, you know, this industry that is not necessarily beholden or supportive of artists, but also having like a cultural cult impact in like a bigger way, you know,
Right.
which is, it's a beautiful documentary. And then some others I was watching, because I was trying to find films that were about artists but had bigger stories to tell, because I wanted to see how they kind of fit together. And some I feel like are more successful than others, but like Mistaken for Strangers, which is this little known documentary that's about the band The National, but it's like not about The National at all. It's I don't know if you've seen it, but it's so meta, but it's this beautiful like film about basically the National's lead singer, about his brother who's making this film about his super successful brother, but he's kind of this failed filmmaker. And it's just so great, and it's just this wonderful character story and like sibling story. And so seeing films like that just kind of helped me understand like ways in which in which to structure the story to tell something bigger while also being very specific.
Yeah, I noticed. I mentioned I'm a Rush fan. The background, a lot of bands starting out have the same kind of track. There's a lot of hard work. There's management. There's this or that. So I caught a lot of not, you know, personality consistency between the two bands, but if you watch the documentary Beyond the Lighted Stage, you see how these young guys get together, learn music, decide that's what they want to do, and the commitment they have. You know, the matches were playing 200-300 dates a year. You know, Rush was 250. I mean, just consistently this and that. But I was also struck by the if you've seen the Beastie Boys documentary on Apple.
I haven't seen that one. I should
It is
probably see that
actually
one.
it's a weird documentary because it's actually them on stage presenting their own band history to. So it was like an event, but you get their story. So they're auto documentarians, I guess. But you see, because their development was a little different, because they were more having a good time. Oh my God, we've become successful, and then trying to go back and re-engineer all that early stuff to do what they decided. Yes, this is what we want to do. So it was, but there's still a lot of the personalities are a lot more similar, because there's a lot more fun between the Beastie Boys and the matches, even though the matches, they took everything seriously. But I did notice the one thing that I jotted down in my notes when I was watching Bleeding Audio was I just wrote joy. They always seemed, I mean, except for when it got bad, you know, when they were just completely overworked. But when they were working the merch tables, happy, legitimately happy. When they were outside doing acoustics after the show with the fans, happy, legitimately happy. You could tell. When they were on stage and they were playing their music, happy. And I loved that all was very genuine, and you captured that really well. They really did seem to be enjoying themselves. I did like, there's a quote, and I don't remember which one of the guys said it, where they said they did everything unconventionally, or they did it unconventionally, but that's how great things get done. And I'll go back to Rush on that. You go back to Beastie Boys on that. They've all done the same thing. They've all been told, you can't do this. And then they go, no, we're going to do this. And then lo and behold, and I hate to use a really pop culture reference, Kelly Clarkson, unfortunately, has done the same thing. I don't know how many times she comes out and says, everyone loves this song, and the studio didn't even want it on the album, and I fought for it, and I got what I wanted. So a lot of times, which goes to another point that you hit in here, which is artist development. Labels and companies need, if there's something in the artist they see, they need to trust that more. And it feels like the matches never really got that opportunity. A lot of other bands do, but a lot of it now does boil down to, if you're not a one-hit wonder, you never get a shot at a second hit.
Well, and that's the thing is it's all about cash flow, right? Is like, back in the day, labels would be able to invest in bands and be able to take those financial risks because they had cash flow coming in from like the bigger giants. But now, I mean, investing in a band or some artist that you think is weird that you don't know is going to be a guaranteed financial success is like, I mean, they can't afford it. Is like there's no financing, there's no money coming in to the same level to do that kind of development, which is a shame because, I don't want to like sound overly critical of music today because I think what's really interesting about the democratization of music and the fact that so many people are now able to create and put their music out there is like a lot of voices who wouldn't have otherwise been able to be heard are now being heard, like and I think that's very exciting. You've got people like Chance the Rapper who like owns all of his songs and he's able to like, one of the main reasons why he's big today is because he went all in on marketing instead of going with a label. There's all these things and dichotomies that we can break down. But the truth is that like, our music these days, it sounds very samey, everything is very similar because, the labels know what works and they know what they can invest in that, yields results and financing. And so that's kind of what happens. It's just this churn, and I feel like, there's just way less creative risk happening because there isn't the financing to back it up, and it's like, I'm not going to give labels a ton of credit because a lot of that money wasn't going back to the artists anyway, but that money is no longer investing in developing talent, which is, I think, the unfortunate unintended consequence of it all as well. So, it's just like a really interesting time. And, I think too, in comparing it to the matches, they, and they say this openly to themselves too, is like, they really did kind of sacrifice their financial success for creative integrity, is like, they really wanted to be able to like have that creative control over their music. And, at the end of the day, I think they're very happy that they were able to, maintain that, especially with a record like Decomposer, which was their second album. And they worked with all those different producers. And it was kind of the first time a rock band had ever done that. And it became this like texturally very interesting, weird art punk record that that I think was way ahead of its time and had, it wasn't the same kind of label artist development that would have existed in the 70s, but it was the Matches kind of investing in themselves in a way of like really having a vision and believing in it and going for it. And unfortunately, artists aren't able to do that and be financed anymore.
No.
But at the same time, like, I think what is interesting again about this like evening of the playing field and everybody can have these tools at home is that like a lot of artists can invest in their own time to be able to create the art that they want. It's unfortunate they can't do it with the guiding hand of a professional like a producer, but like I think it's a really interesting time where like people are starting to kind of make their own luck. And if Bleeding Audio is any indication and the Matches work ethic are any indication, like we're in a time where the technology has given us tools where we can make our own art and fight for it, and that's definitely what I had to do with this movie. We had a supportive fan base through the Matches, but people in the music in the film industry were super skeptical. Like it was really hard to get financing for this film. We didn't get financing for this film. Like it's one of the reasons why it took 6 years is I basically had to self-finance or like find people who are willing to work for free or deferred. And I feel like when you believe in something and you believe in your art and yourself, you kind of got to go all in on it, because no one's waiting for somebody to give you permission to do something it's going to be a long wait,
Yes, it is. So again, Bleeding Audio is a great documentary. Where are people going to be able to see it after Slamdance? Will they be able to see it after Slamdance is over? Where are we at?
We, like any independent film, we are, seeking distribution. We're, playing festivals right now. We have a couple other film festivals coming up that have just been announced. We'll be screening at the San Luis Obispo International Film Festival virtually, and we'll be screening at the Oxford Film Festival virtually, and they're also doing a drive-in screening
Oh,
at the end of
nice.
March, which I think is going to be great. I'm not going to be able to go, so everybody should go for me and take pictures.
That'll be cool.
Oxford and Mississippi, and then I think those are the only two that are announced. But we have a bunch of film festivals happening in March, and hopefully sometime in the next few months we can land on a major streaming platform, and maybe once it's safe to gather again, we'll do some theater screenings. That's been part of the master plan the whole time. So I would love to continue that kind of co-tour of doing screenings and maybe a little live show after.
Right. That is part of the appeal of seeing it, is because you're going to re-expose this music that I have not had a chance to go and pull up anywhere. But it's on my check. It's on my list to go and listen to more of it. So speaking of, we can't go out and gather, how have you been spending your time for the last 12 months?
Oh my God, I can't believe it's almost on a year. I mean, my day job is I do corporate videos again, so I've been doing a lot of remote Zoom directing. It's not great, but I'm grateful for the work, but it's very hard to direct human beings through a screen and digital space.
Yep.
We've been hunkered down, really, getting that cabin fever real good. And I've been trying really hard to be creative and write, but I've also been trying really hard to be kind to myself, because I feel like all of us are kind of experiencing a collective trauma right now, and creating art while experiencing trauma isn't exactly a super healthy pressure to put on yourself. So while I've been doing a lot of writing, I've got 3 feature-length stories, screenplays that I'd love to pursue, once Bleeding Audio's run is through. It's they could use some rewrites, and I'll get on it as soon as these festivals are over. But it's definitely been an interesting time of lots of highs and lows, and just trying to learn how to exist in the world as it is today.
Yeah. I was going to ask. You led right into it. Do you consider yourself a documentarian, or do you want features and you just happened into this documentary?
Yeah, it's funny. I come from the narrative world, like working with actors, screenwriting. That's kind of, that's the dream for me. And I do a lot of doc styled work, brand content, and brand documentaries. And so it just felt like a natural progression to kind of take those skills that I was learning at work and apply it to a feature length form. Plus the story came through, and I feel like as a filmmaker, when a story enters into your conscience, it's like you just have to exercise it, it just has to come out of you. And so like this story kind of entered into my soul, and I've just been trying really hard to just get it out there for everybody. Like I feel like you almost just feel like it's your job to tell the story because no one else will, and so Bleeding Audio has definitely been that for me. And I consider myself a storyteller, like that's really at my core. All this time I've had in quarantine, I've been able to have that soul search and recognize, like, what is it that keeps me doing this? And for me, it's just storytelling. And so would I do another documentary? I definitely need a documentary break. The joke I've been saying to everyone is, they're like, oh, what's your next doc going to be? And the answer is funded.
There you go.
If somebody wants to finance a doc or wants me to direct their doc and has a budget, sign me up. But the self-funded doc, I don't think I have the stamina at this point in time to do. But for one of these scripted things, that the screenplay that I have that I would love to do after Bleeding Audio, I'm going to try and pursue that pretty strongly in the next few months.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us. We enjoyed Bleeding Audio a lot. I hope people get to see it either down the road on a streaming platform at one of the film festivals coming up. They're still doing them. Sign up virtual. You can watch a lot of movies virtually at a film festival that you're not shuttling from theater to theater for, as I learned, unfortunately, during Sundance. But Slamdance is the same way. It would have been a lot less films to see had I had to truck down to the venues. Let's end on a lighter note. What movie are you looking forward to seeing when you feel comfortable going back to a theater?
Ooh,
What's the one that you're like, oh, please be open, theater? What's that movie? What's that movie you're waiting for?
Oh man, I don't even know anymore. What movies are even coming out?
Well, it depends. What kind of movies do you like?
I know I
Are
like
you
so
a
many.
big budget blockbuster movie person? Are you
I love them all.
you love them all? Well,
Yeah.
we have Black Widow that's been pushed and pushed and pushed.
Oh,
We have Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley and Chaos Walking, which may be a little weird. I don't know about that one yet.
Yeah. Probably
There.
Black Widow, honestly, because like it came to mind where I was like, what's a big film that would be a great theater experience? And I feel like Black Widow would definitely be that, because I think it's just a crime that she hasn't had her own Marvel movie yet.
I know,
like
right?
It's an absolute crime, because she's one of the most interesting characters in the Avengers. And but I will say, like, I've been enjoying WandaVision a lot.
Well, who hasn't?
I know, it's so great. Like, it's basically a Marvel series about grief, and it's giving, like, I just love it. Like, what a great thing to watch.
It is excellent. I will play. You know what's great? I get to plug whatever I want on this podcast because nobody pays me. I wish they would, and then I would plug stuff for them, but I get to plug whatever I want. So if you're an HBO person, there's a Spanish language series called 30 Coins.
30 Coins.
It just ended, 7 or 8 episodes. Yeah, it's pretty
Really
good. It's
okay,
pretty
great.
Good. It is not terrible
list.
At all.
It is on my list. But yeah, in terms of just cinema, I mean, and going to the theater, and I'm not exaggerating, whatever's playing 7 p.m. on the Friday night that the cinema is open and I'm vaccinated, and I'll be in that seat with a giant thing of popcorn, and then they'll just have to literally pull me out of the theater because I'll just sit there for the next film. So that's how I feel. Like, the two things I miss most are seeing movies in theaters with an audience, and live music.
Yeah, live music would be nice, and
yeah,
a vacation somewhere where you're not like, well, can we actually go there? That would be lovely.
Right. I know.
Well,
like, it's I miss it all. Miss places.
Places. That's how we have places. We miss places. Well, I hope we all get our vaccinations soon. Apparently what we've got is already helping. Let's, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And hopefully we will see each other out in the world. And thanks again for joining us, Chelsea. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
And maybe when you do your feature, we'll have you back.
Yeah.
So
we'll see.
Thanks everyone for joining us here on the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. Say goodbye to Chelsea. And we will see her next time. Bye-bye.